Welcome back to Sampstra Games, the place to find new strategy games, and Unity of Command 2 has a brand new DLC called Barbarossa, which we're going to check out today. So I'm going to show you how to do the Heeresgruppe Nord scenario on normal difficulty while achieving all objectives. So before we begin, I got to show you what I bought or what I have on my different HQs. So we're going to go through them one by one. The only ones that matter for this scenario is the HQ Nord and the PZG4, so these first two. I bought the ability to build a bridge on the HG Nord. It's going to be pretty useful in this scenario, but it's not completely necessary. And this was just the basic setup that you had. Now I'm going to show you the rest. I actually haven't bought anything in some of these other ones. Maybe I bought a bridge here. I'm not sure if this is something you had by default or not. And here I bought the ability to oversupply a motor unit. But these are just for the scenario. The reason I'm showing it to you right now is because you have to decide at the beginning when you have the conference. I didn't buy any card. This card that I have here is as a result of this scenario. I don't like to buy cards at the beginning because you get a random setup. So if you're trying to recreate the battle that I'm going to show you, you actually can't do that because you might not have the same card. So I only like to use cards that you get in scenarios. All right, so let's go into the tactics window, and I'm going to show you the strategy for Heeresgruppe Nord. Welcome to the tactics window, where I'll tell you how to do the Heeresgruppe Nord scenario. So we have two main objectives, the Daugava River by turn 5 and the Riga by turn 7. And then we have bonus objectives of the Daugavpils Crossing, Kaunas, Liepaja, and Jacobolics Crossing. Personally, the most difficult part in this scenario is just to get to Daugava River and Daugavpils Crossing in time, because it's pretty far and there are going to be a lot of enemy units that are going to be stopping you. The way to do it is a little unexpected. The way to get there fast enough is actually by utilizing out of supplying the enemy. So you're going to need to get a unit, one of these units of this infantry up here. We're going to need to get it to step on this railway that's supplying Shalai. Then you're going to need to grab one motorized unit and get it somewhere here. And by using these two things, you're going to make sure that this entire area is going to be out of supply. Now, that's going to be really important. Why? Well, in order to get to Daugava River in time, we're going to need to use all of these tanks and any unit that's like mobile and move towards Daugava River as fast as possible. How are you going to get there is, first of all, you're going to grab some infantry and place it on these two hexes so that you can bypass the zone of control of these. Let me just show you of these units, because they have zone of control in these hexes and you can't normally move through. But if you have a friendly unit that's standing there, so if I have an infantry that's standing here and here, I can then grab a different unit and here and move through to, for example, this hex, and then I can move through. So first thing, you want to use your infantry to stand there, and then your motorized units will move into generally like this area. Now, why was the out of supply so important? Well, if you don't out of supply the enemy, then the enemy is going to have a lot of units somewhere, let's say somewhere here, and these units are going to be really strong. So they will stop your advancing towards the Daugava River because they will be able to do like 3-0, 2-0 attacks on you, and your motorized units will be dead. But if they're out of supply, they will be significantly weaker and they will not be able to do good attacks, so they will not attack you at all, and it will give you time to sort of move towards the Daugava River as quickly as possible. So you're going to use your motorized units to move the Daugava River. Most of this infantry here is just going to be used to stop the enemies and make sure that you can bypass the zone of control. Also, you want to use some of them to protect this railway over here so that your units up here near Liepaja will be supplied. So we already talked about how to do the Daugava River and the Daugavpils Crossing. The Liepaja is going to be out of supply because of the unit that you're going to place over here, so that's also pretty easy. These units here on the bottom all focus on Kaunas, so you're going to be moving them over here, and you need to get to Kaunas fairly quickly. This is also going to be important because once you take over Kaunas, you will be able to have a supply that's going to connect up to this little pathway. It's pretty hard to see. Let me just pick a different color. There's this path over here, and this will help you supply your units that are going to be near Daugava River. So it's going to be important that you take over Kaunas fairly quickly. So Kaunas will be on turn 4 like it's supposed to be. And then the only thing you're going to have left is the Jacobolics Crossing and Riga. Riga is quite easy, to be honest. There aren't that many enemy units here. Essentially, what you want to do is around turn like 5 or 4, you're going to start advancing up here. Again, it's not a particularly difficult combat, at least I haven't found in my experience. You will not be able to out-of-supply the units in Riga because they have their own railway over here, but you have already out-of-supply all the other units here, so it shouldn't be too much of a combat to get there. Yeah, Riga's just simple. There's nothing to worry about. The Jakobi crossing is a little bit more difficult because the enemy does have a bunch of units here in this area. But remember, all the units that they have in this area are going to be out of supply. The units here, do we have supply? The easiest way to do it could be... I found that the easiest way is just to get there fast enough. Like, they don't necessarily have units that tend to stand there. So if you can just kind of sneak yourself in to get there, it should be fine. Also, you have to take it by turn 6. And you should be able to get Daugava River around turn 4 or 5, and you're going to have quite a bunch of tanks here, so you should be able to just move them upwards and take it over. If you can get really quick with Riga, you might be able to take over Riga and outsupply them there, which could be helpful, but it depends on whether you're fast enough. But I haven't found the Jacobel crossing overly complicated either. It's really about whether you can get to the Daugava River and to the Kapis crossing before the enemy, then you have essentially won. Everything else is kind of a walk in the park. If not, then it's over. And whether you can get there really depends on whether you can unsupply this area fast enough. All right, now let's begin. All right, so we're going to do this in the history mode because it's much faster, and I'm going to walk you through it. There are a couple of mistakes in this playthrough. I didn't always check up the zone of control properly, but I think it's good to see because you can see that even if you make mistakes, it doesn't mean that you can't finish the scenario while completing all the objectives. So first things I did is I added an artillery unit over here. What I was trying to do is to do a setup where you have like 2 artilleries to see if like the combo is going to be that much stronger. Didn't actually work out as much as I was hoping so next time I'm probably going to just split it into multiple units so that I can use the special abilities that this allows me to do. Then I played some engineers. The engineers are super important because they do not get a negative effect when attacking over water, which is going to be quite useful. And I also played in a couple more engineer units and added an armor unit on this tank. All right, next I have moved my HQ a little bit further upwards and replaced the hubs a little bit. You can see the next HQ is also moved. And I've added a supply hub over here. I'm just moving the supply hubs around. I'm actually going to show you right before we, so this is where we will start the scenario. So this is where my supply hubs are at the moment. Later on, I'm going to place another one up on the top over here. If you look at my supply, I'm currently fairly well supplied, and the enemy is also fairly well supplied, as you can see over here. So let's move into the next set. So we're going to start our first turn. So I'm starting off by attacking these units. What you gotta do in the beginning is you wanna try to move fairly quickly towards Kaunas. The way it turns out for me is actually not ideal. You could move a little bit further, I believe, in the first turn, but I kind of like tried to move around, try to make sure that I get good odds, like ideally 0 something, at most 1-1. Sometimes when you have a 1-1, a good thing to do is instead of going, this was a good example. Instead of going for the 1-1, especially if you have a unit, actually it's not the case here, but for example with this unit, if you have a 1-1, it will kill your specialized unit because this is kind of like the order in which the units get killed. So if you have a specialist first, it's really, really bad for you because if you have a 1-1, you will immediately die. The specialist will immediately die. So typically you want to either grab a different unit. For example, this one here, if it's a 1-1, it just use this step instead of the specialist, which is fine. Or you want to use a suppressive attack, which is what I did over here. I used a suppressive attack at this unit because I knew that it would suppress them, which would make it easier for the other units when they want to attack, but it wouldn't make me lose any specialists. So this is something you want to do quite occasionally. Or like I said here, just grab a unit that doesn't have any specialist and use the 1-1 over there. That can be useful as well. Your goal is to try to move as quickly towards Kaunas, so you want to kind of push in this direction. I'm also trying to utilize overrun a lot. You might notice that when we attack this unit, it's at overrun, and I still have this lightning symbol, which means I still have an attack with this unit. So using overrun the right way is really important. When you hover over an enemy, you're going to be able to see the odds of retreat and overrun, and especially with tanks, overrun can often be like 70, 80, 90%. So you really want to make sure that you first attack the units that give you the highest chance of overrun, so you can retain your action and attack multiple times. Because now with this unit I can essentially attack twice, which is what I'm doing right now. So you can see that it can be really, really useful. Here I'm just trying to make sure that this unit on the bottom will not be able to kind of cut me off and take away my supply. And I'm trying to move more units towards Kaunas. Now this part here is super important. I'm moving all of this infantry up front. It's not so much that I want to attack the enemy because the odds of that are terrible. It's because I want to make sure that I can move through, because otherwise the zone of control, so each unit has a zone of control, one hex all around them. So here, and this unit has a zone of control here, I wouldn't be able to push through. But if you place a unit there like this infantry, you can move through the area of the infantry. So I could grab this tank and move it to this hex. But and then it would get stuck with this unit zone of control. But now I have the infantry here, so I can take this tank and move through. And this can be really important because it allows you to sort of run through enemy units in a really, really smart way. And this is super important. So you can see that I'm kind of keep utilizing this. I'm trying to move through. Why am I moving hex by hex and not immediately, you might ask? If you move like a further area, for example to here, and there's an enemy unit here, it will stop you earlier because it's like you get surprised by their presence, so to speak. But if you move hex by hex, you might be able to move a little bit further. Because you have the sort of, because for example with this recon I can see units that are far away, but if I were to just straight move through here I would stop on this hex, but now I have the ability to move further, so that's why I want to do it slowly. Now you need to move all your motorized units in this area because you only have turn 5 to get Dagara River and the Dagopas crossing, which is super difficult. I would say that's the most difficult part of this entire scenario, is to get there fast enough. The fighting is fairly simple, but the getting there is rough, and the way to do it is a little unexpected. You'll know from the tactics window, but essentially the way to do it is to make sure that you unsupply this entire area for the enemy. You can see that's supplied pretty well now, but because otherwise they'll have a lot of units here and the units will be too strong and they will hurt you. So you need to make sure that you get some units up here to sort of stop this supply. You'll see that as we get to it. So let's just click play. Yeah, so all of the motorized units are near the northwestern HQ of the enemy. Now up here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to step onto this railway so that I can unsupply Liepaja and also Shilrai from this direction. That's also going to be important, so I'm currently just moving there. I'm also adding a supply hub so that my units here will remain supplied. And I'm trying to place my infantry to utilize my zone of control and make sure that they can't step over here. Now here I used some airstrike because I had it, and I'm trying to hit this unit. I'm trying to hit this unit because of the way, if you zoom in, you're going to be able to see this path here, and this path is actually a supply path. So the problem is if too many enemies stand there, they could block your supply. Currently I have enough of a range from this supply up to this path and then can kind of move through, but it's going to be important later. A few times in my test game I actually kind of did this place wrong, and I have the enemy, I think they stood here, and that was kind of the problem because there was no further connection. Right now the way this would actually work out even without the hex, but you want to be careful, so I try to make sure that I don't mess that up. All right, end of turn 1. So this was actually not ideal. The enemies kind of surrounded all of my motorized units, so they're out of supply. This is going to be a bit of a problem later. But honestly, because in this scenario you have to move so quickly towards the... what is it called again? The Daugava River, you actually can't afford to wait around. You have to move the units even though they're out of supply, which, as you're going to see, is going to be a big problem later. But right now I couldn't do anything about it. But this is a problem. We should have made sure that we had someone on this hex. And if you're going to be playing, make sure that you use your zone of control properly to protect yourself from this, because this will be a huge problem later on. And you know, if you're playing like, you know, you're maybe not that, let's say, used to this game, you might be sort of inclined to kind of keep these units here and make sure that you can resupply, which is the right move. But the problem is, if you do that, you will just not get there in time, especially because in the briefing it tells you that in turn 4 and 5 they get some reinforcements. So if you don't have this area, you won't be able to win. So this is kind of like a counterproductive, because instead of like trying to go back, you actually have to keep moving. Now I have managed to resupply at least this unit. I should have resupplied more. I don't know why I didn't do it. I really should have done at least like maybe one of these tanks. It would have been super helpful. I'm moving up here in this area. This is very important because notice now that this entire area is out of supply. They do have this railway, you can't unsupply that. But this entire area is out of supply. This is super important because this happens on turn 2. So they're going to lose a lot of their supply. Really, really important. Alright, next we gotta focus on counters. Again, I'm trying to utilize overrun, and I'm also trying to place my infantry near the edge of the river, because remember, if you don't have a bridge, it takes an entire turn to cross the river, so you want to make sure that you're near the edge. I also built a bridge here simply because I had the command points. I should have used the command points to resupply a motorized tank instead, but you know, hindsight's 2020. Like I said, I'm trying to move forward here towards the Daugava River, ignoring the fact that my units are out of supply. Again, problem later, but you get it. You'll see. You'll see later on. It'll be like, you shouldn't have done that. Well, yeah, but I had to. If I didn't do it, I wouldn't be able to get to Daugava River in time. Now here, I was trying to move the HQ closer to get a range, but if you actually click on the HQ, you would see... Oh, it doesn't allow me to do that? Okay, it's a bit unfortunate. I thought it would allow me to do that. The HQ still doesn't have a range, and not to mention I don't even have a control over this area to connect up. This is important, this step here. I got to take over this railway, so now their entire area here is out of supply, entire area here is out of supply, and this is going to help us immensely later on. And again, here I'm trying to position my infantry to utilize the zone of control to make sure that they can step over here. You're gonna see how successful I was soon. You know, sometimes it's a lot of stuff that you have to think about, and then you're like, yep, I totally missed that. So soon you'll see all my mistakes. Yeah, they're taking away the supplies up in canals, which is smart because they're out of supply anyway, so they're useless. You don't really care about that. Sure, if you could step on it, you could oversupply your units, but it would be nice. I'm trying to surround canals and kind of get ready. Now, what I did with this tank was, what I was trying to do is I was trying to make sure that I have this connection for this path to give me a supply. But the problem is, because I don't have canals, it's actually useless right now, so I didn't really need to do it. Also, I kind of thought that the tank might be supplied here. It wasn't, so it was a bit of a waste of a move there with the tank. Here, I'm trying to move closer towards Riga and make sure that all of this remains unsupplied, which works out pretty well. I'm just trying to get there and kind of see what's up there. Here, I was trying to make these units weaker, not necessarily to kill them, but just to make sure that they don't kill me, because if they get something like a 2-0, 3-0 at these motorized units, you're dead. Because this unit will be gone and you will not be able to get to Daugava. Because you won't have a unit that have a great movement. So you really, here, you're just trying to make sure the enemy units are weak enough so that they do not dare to attack you. Obviously, if you're playing on easy difficulty, you don't have to worry about it as much. If you're playing on classic, then... if you're playing on classic, I feel like maybe that mistake at the beginning where those units became out of supply would be enough to destroy your game, but... We're playing on normal, so there is some forgiveness and some leeway that we've got. So that mistake at the start is not fatal for us here. Okay, let me just show you. I've kind of removed changed the supply hubs. The way we moved it is good, but honestly, if you could move it a little bit further, it would probably be a bit more effective. What I was trying to do is create 4 supply hubs to make sure that this unit will be in supply, but... it could have been done a little bit better, if we're being honest. Make sure that the supply is as forward as possible when you're going to be playing yourself. And we did some more attacks on Kaunas. We didn't be able to take over just yet, but we're kind of moving in that direction. Yeah, this. This obviously was a huge mistake. These units are out of supply, which is going to be a problem. It's not as big of a problem as the units that were out of supply here. This tank is easily killable. So it's not too bad, but again, it's something you want to keep in mind. And this is the thing, like, you know, especially if you're you know, focusing a lot on for example, getting to Gava, we can forget other places. But yeah, this is an easy fix. It's not too problematic because of the fact how we unsupplied the enemy. That was super helpful, but ideally you want to avoid that mistake. I don't think there's anything else I need to say about it. Just try to make sure you don't... Yeah, and as you can see, most of these enemy units here are out of supply, so you can hit them up pretty easily. Same with these enemy units here. They're just trying to move. Yeah, I got overrun, so I was able to do multiple attacks. Now here, I couldn't move with this tank because this tank is super out of supply. So I had to kind of place it in a good place, but I was able to get the Gava River and the Dalkup crossing with these two units. What's going to be really important is how we can supply them, because we won't be able to, but because you're so fast, you should be able to handle it regardless, and the enemy shouldn't be able to hurt you. Now we need to take over Canos so that we can get the supply at least somewhat in the direction towards the Gava River. So I used the set piece attack if I remember correctly, and then I just utilized some overruns and positioning. So now if you actually look at the supply, you can see that I do have a supply in this entire area. I don't have these two units, but I just didn't have enough of a range, and I have 4 supply hubs over here to try to get there. I'm trying to move some infantry forward so that we can hit up any enemy units that might arrive in this area and use the tanks to move in the area of the Dagava River. You might say, you already have the Dagava River, don't worry about it. Well, you have to hold it, and the enemy is going to get reinforcements. So you don't want to you don't want to forget about it. You want to sort of keep it in your mind, make sure that you can get there with other units. By the way, let me know how you feel about this history mode. I know that typically you guys have been complaining that you can't see the odds, but I'm trying to give you a lot of explanation to kind of cover up for the fact that you can see the odds, and to kind of explain like my thought process on this. So I hope you guys like it. Here, the way I stepped on the left part, let me just show you. On the left part, so this probably wasn't that important because we're already taking away the supply, but I was just trying to get myself in a good position so I'll have the attacks on it. It wasn't really necessary because these two units should do enough damage, but because of this positioning, this will allow me to take these units and move them towards Riga later on. Here, as you're going to see, the enemy is going to get some units in that area soon. They're moving their... Okay, I think there was a unit there. Maybe I didn't see it in time, but there was one. Yeah, now I have a lot of enemy units that just have every step suppressed. So what we're kind of trying to do is just like take over Liepea and hit the enemies. If I remember correctly, we're taking over Liepea much faster than we had to. Yeah, there's no way to show the objectives, right? So yeah, we had quite a few turns. We're taking it over on turn 5, but I think we've got time to like turn 6 or 7 maybe for that. Alright, taking over Shiloi as well. We got the overrun here, which is pretty useful, but it's not necessary. Yeah, I'm trying to move again step by step. So there's only one unit in Riga, so we should be able to take it over. Here, like I said, we want to use the infantry to take care of the enemy units and then move forward. Here, what I was trying to do is get the tanks that are strong towards these areas so that they can protect them, and take these units that are out of supply and move them into areas where they will be supplied. Because we still have to take over the Jekabilsk crossing and Riga. The infantry, how you move it here is kind of irrelevant, honestly, at this point. You're not going to be using any of this infantry for anything. So just make sure that you place them on places that are supplied, and that you increase your I guess, area of control. But it's kind of irrelevant. I was trying to find if there are maybe like some more enemies that I could kill on the way, but... Alright, here I managed to take over the crossing. Now, it does mean this unit will be out of supply, which is not great, but I figured it's gonna be fine. So at the start of the game, you will get the ability to get like a regular airstrike, which is what I used on Riga, and the super strong airstrike. I'm using it here. Again, it's not so much that I need the enemy units to get hurt. It's because I want to make sure that they're weak enough so that they will not attack this unit over here. This unit will get... Actually, it won't get supplied, so it will take Next time it will be out of supply, we have to move it away and move the tank in, which we can, but we gotta make sure that the enemy doesn't kill it. So that's why I'm using these powerful airstrikes to kind of weaken them down, be like, hey, don't you even think about hitting my units. Also, I don't think we needed to take the crossing on this turn. We could have waited for next one. So if you were playing on like a really high difficulty like Classic, you might want to... Actually, I don't know what the time limit is on Classic, but if you had an extra turn, you might want to wait and not use the unit like this, because this was a fairly risky move. But one of the reasons why I did it is because you do not need to hold the geopolitical crossing. So by taking it over, we just had it. And it was ours, and even if they destroyed this unit, it obviously would be bad because we would have a lot of losses. But when it comes to like the objectives, we would be fine because we already had it. Now, as for Riga, we used the airstrike, and we had this infantry and this German motorized unit to take it over, so there wasn't much of a problem. Here, I'm just trying to make sure that the strongest unit's standing on Riga so that they won't be able to destroy it. And you can see that here I'm using the tank to destroy the enemy. And then I'm gonna try to switch it with this unit over there, and make sure that I place this unit on a spot where it's going to be supplied. Yeah, I just did some damage because I could, because it's always good to give experience to your units. So I was like, if it's like a 0-something attack, it's useful to go for it. This overhand taking was honestly absolutely unnecessary, but you know, sometimes you just want to take over the enemy supply hubs for fun. And on the left top, we're trying to make sure that our units are stay in supply. Not really necessary. Yeah, see, I still have the airstrikes, so I'm using them. Again, you don't really care about it because you've already won at this point, but you gotta make sure that they don't take it back because it's a main objective, and by that I mean Riga. So that's why I was like kind of hitting them up, but... yeah, we're done at this point. Victory. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, run on in the comments. Let me know if you'd like to see more guides for other areas, and whether you find the commentary detailed enough, or if you'd like me to talk even more about different steps. I mean, I know it's important to see the odds, but I feel like I am telling you that I only do odds of 1, 1, or 0 something. And it just takes a really long time. Like I've tried to do that, but it's like this video would take maybe hour, a little over an hour if I did it with the proper way, because I'm always like clicking on units and just looking what are the odds, is this useful, and just it takes a long time, and I just don't want to make these videos super long. And also because if you're gonna be playing it yourself, you're gonna have units in different positions anyway, so it's not like you can like repeat the movement exactly because there's certain random elements in it, so it's like it's not going to be that helpful, I feel. I think the most important part is really just the tactics window. This is actually an important question. Would you find it more interesting if you had just the tactics window, and then maybe I would just show you like a few cuts of this history mode, like when we took different areas, and maybe just show some most important moments instead of giving you an overview like this? So it would be like just the beginning, like the HQs, the tactics window, and then just maybe like 5 minutes of a very quick edited cut through of this entire thing. Or do you prefer the history mode detail like this? Let me know everything in the comments, and you can click on the right to watch my guides for the regular Unity of Command 2 or the Blitzkrieg DLC. I'll see you there. Bye bye.